Hi there, my name is Carrera Alvarez, signature artist for Wella Professional. I'm joining you here at the Wella Studio in LA, and I'm going to share with you a tutorial on creative color transformation. My model Amar brought in some pictures of some very transformative color. Pinks, coppers, really colors that are very exciting. And in that consultation, I decided to really dive into not only the density of her hair, her natural level, but also the previous color that she has existing on her hair. After my initial consultation with Amar, I decided to start with a strand test. So what I did was I mixed up Blondor with 20 volume developer and allowed that to process for 10 minutes. Now what that's exposed is the different levels of hair that she has from pre-existing color. So as you can see here, she has a level 6 scattered in with a little bit of level 7 at the root area. Then through these ends where the previous color or existing color has been, we're dropping all the way down through 6s and all the way down to a 5. So that's really going to determine my product choice and placement going forward. Using my natural level indicator, I'm deciding where her starting point is. So starting here, it's a level 2 at the root area, and the natural variations go all the way to a level 4 through these ends. Before we get started on her creative foil placement, we're going to start with giving her a quick haircut. Great, now that I've collaborated with Eric on this amazing haircut, let's get started with the color placement. With the amount of density that Amar has, I have a triangular veil section in combination with a thin rectangular section through the top. It's really important as you're doing creative color to make sure that you're looking at the overall haircut as a whole. So now that I've gotten my veil sectioned out, I am going to take a subsection off of that veil, almost like an elongated triangle. What I want to do is use the color to move the direction of the haircut. So because the haircut is based triangular, I want to mimic the section of that haircut. And what I'm going to start with doing is taking a thin section, and as you can see here, the width of this section is going to be too large for a single foil. So I'm going to take that and split it into 2 foils so that I have control of what's going into each packet. That's going to give me not only control of the hair, but it's also going to help with control of the lift. You want to make sure that you have a minimal amount of hair in each packet so that you have a really good saturation, and that's really going to help with getting a perfect lift, especially because her hair is so dark to begin with. Now that I have the section that I'm going to start with, I am actually going to choose to do a slight back comb. Now let me remind you what my strand test looked like. I think this is a very, very common thing when you're working with people that come in with previous color. And as a colorist, I could do 2 things. I can choose to change my developer based on the hair strand. So maybe starting with a lower volume of developer at the area that's natural, moving into a high volume of developer, which is very easy to do. However, today what I wanted to do is I chose to work with 1 developer. The product that I chose to work with today is our Blondor Plex mix 1 part to 1.5 parts of Welloxin 20 volume developer. And what I'm going to do in order to help minimize the brightness at the root is I'm going to go ahead and use a very gentle back comb to give me not only a dimension at the root, but also to control overlifting through that natural area. As you can see, I'm able to see directly through underneath my foil. That's going to ensure that I get enough product to saturate roots through ends to make sure that I'm going to get the lift that I'm looking for. I've saturated all the way through mid-lengths to ends. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush with my product and I'm going to gently add some product up into this front area here with almost a side, so it's going to blend that area but still allow that back combing to do its job to give me a little bit of buffer at that root. One of the tips to folding foils is you want to make sure that you're doing minimal amount of over movement to the foil. So what I like to do is I like to take my fingers and just gently pinch the foil and use my thumbs to do all the bending. Now what I'm going to do is use my back of my hand or my hand as a table, and I'm going to use my tail comb to just gently fold where I want that product to be. Another really important part of working with creative foiling is you want to make sure that you're not folding past your subsection. So use your subsection as the guide to where you're going to put that fold exactly. That way you're not pulling hair from one section to the other, and it gives you a really nice, beautiful, clean foil that as you're moving through, you can manipulate if you need to without doing any dragging. Now that I got the initial first foil in, I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side of the section. Keeping in mind that this is still the same section, I just divided it in two to have better control of that hair. As you can see here, I have the same amount of hair, and I'm going to work with the same type of idea of doing that gentle back comb to be able to diffuse this root, knowing that my strand test exposed a little bit lighter lift through this root area. And again, making sure that I'm not putting too much hair in each packet, because again, that's going to ensure the fact that I'm going to be able to evenly saturate this hair strand and get a good amount of lift, the lift that I'm really looking at to give us that creative pops of color. Now that I have these mids and ends saturated thoroughly, I'm going to take my brush and do a side stroke to blend up that product into that soft back comb. This is going to help diffuse that root area and minimize any type of line of demarcation that might happen during that lift. Okay. Again, now I'm going to fold the foil with just my fingertips, making sure that I'm not over manipulating that foil. And using my thumb and my tail comb to really do all the work of folding that section. And there we go. So this is the completed first section. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue working up through this triangular section, and I will catch up to you when I finish that. Now that I've finished this first section, you can see here that these foils, there's about 4 on either side, nicely placed in here. I'm going to mimic the exact same sectioning onto the other side. Now that I've finished both sections on either side of the veil, I'm going to transition into the top area where I've sectioned off in that thin rectangular section. Utilizing the same exact technique with back-to-back slices and a slight back comb, I'm going to work horizontally through this section until I have all the hair foiled away. Let's do a quick recap before I send her off to process. I worked with outlining my veil section, working with horizontal slices with a very slight back comb, roughly about 8 foils on either side. Then I transitioned into my thin rectangular section, again continuing with the back-to-back slices and a very gentle back comb. Now let's go ahead and allow her to process. Now that I've allowed her to process for a little bit of time, I wanted to go back through and make sure that each section has really good saturation. Remembering the fact that we were working on not only dark, dense hair, but you also have things like this that come up as you're foiling when you're working with previous color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my overall saturation. You can see here where the color is lifting a little bit uneven. And I'm going to replace this with a new foil just to keep my workspace nice and clean. And I mixed up fresh color. I think that's super important to make sure that you're working with a fresh batch of color. And I'm going to reapply this area, especially through these mid-lengths and ends. Now that I've resaturated, it's just super important to remember that saturation is key to any type of color work that you're doing, especially when you're working on areas of the head that have been previously colored with dark tints. Now I'm going to fold this up and allow it to continue processing with the fresh application of lightener. And I'll do the same exact thing throughout the rest of my sectioning. Okay, so after I've resaturated and allowed this to process for roughly about 50 minutes, you can see I brought it down and it looks really nice and even to me. And that's what I was looking for, just making sure that the color from roots to tips were nice and even. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the Wellaplex number 2, get her properly shampooed. And then once I get her back to the chair, at that point, I'll identify what level I have and what colors I'm gonna go forward with. So now that we've gotten her shampooed, what I did was I brought her back to the chair and just rough dried some of the moisture off. That way I can really properly identify the underlying pigment that we're working with. So let's take a look at that. So she's lifted to a great even level 7. So now we can get on to the fun things and mix up her color. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking basically the same mirroring section that I did when I pre-lightened her, but instead of foiling everything back to back, I'm just using this foil as a protection because she's still natural on the underneath. And I'm gonna apply her all over color, her toner, directly onto the section that was pre-lightened. My formulation is 3 parts of Colorist and Perfect Level 7 Intense Red Gold, so that would be a 7/7/4/3, mixed with 1 part of a Level 5 Double Red, so that's a 1 part 5/5/4/4, and 1 part of the Pink Pure Mixed Tone, so that's 0/6/5. And I mixed that equally with 20 volume Willoxon Developer. Now the reason why I chose to use 20 volume is because her hair is strong, especially because I also use Wellaplex. Her hair is in great integrity and can handle that 20 volume with permanent color as a toner. I love working with the permanent color as a toner because it allows me to lift a little bit further through that yellowy orangey stage, but it also prevents the toner from dropping too quickly. So it gives me the working time of the lift and slight deposit at the same time. So working with her natural base color, I just want to make sure that I am still using that feathering action to ensure that that 20 volume mixed with my toner does not do any lift onto her natural color left uncolored. Now that I've applied the toner to all the sections, I just use this foil, if you can remember, just to keep it nice and clean and off of the hair that has not been colored. But a little trick is you want to make sure that you get really good saturation. So what I like to do is once I've put in all my color, I like to go through with a wide tooth comb and just massage that color through, comb it through to make sure that every single pre-lightened area gets properly saturated with my toning color. Then I'm just going to lay another foil right on here and allow her to process for the rest of the remaining time. Once I finish combing this section through, I'm gonna allow her to process really just visually. So once I've gotten to the level and depth that I want to achieve with my tone, I'm gonna go ahead and shampoo, color post service, and get her blow dried. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this inspirational creative foil application. As you can tell, it's a very quick and easy technique for you stylists behind the chair to do a really transformative look on a great haircut like the one that Eric did. This is also a great look for your clients because of the placement. It's super low maintenance, so they won't have to come in as regularly for a touch-up. So thank you again. I would love to stay connected with you. Please follow me on Instagram. And also for more education offerings, check out wellaed.com.